Morning everyone, it's great to be here today. I'm sorry that I'm quite short and I don't know whether you can see me, but that might not be a bad thing. So I'm going to talk to you about Fresh Eyes initiative with Hospice UK, along with Anita and Roberta. So the Fresh Eyes walkthroughs, as we call them, were an initiative that came from the People in Partnership group at Hospice UK. So the People in Partnership group at Hospice UK is a group of people with lived experience of end-of-life care or life-limiting illnesses. And I'm chair of that group. People in the room may know me from a different role, and if you do, it's part of the same thing, just slightly different. So I got involved with Hospice UK probably about 4 years or so ago, because my husband Seth died from pancreatic cancer. The care that we got in the hospital wasn't the most fantastic care, and because I worked in the NHS, I understood what person and family-centred care looked like. And if I'm honest, the rhetoric talked about care that was there, and the care that Seth and I got was somewhere with a big gap in between. And I was able to identify that because I lived and breathed it every single day. So I was determined that I would share Seth's and my story to improve care for people. And through that process became involved in the Hospice UK People in Partnership group. So just to put death and dying in context, we talk lots about choice. We talk about people having the choice to die where they want to die. Seth was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He was at work on Monday at 4 o'clock. By 4 o'clock on Tuesday, he was told he was dying. He'd got days, maybe weeks to live. We had a conversation, and we'd had conversations before in a very kind of jokey, trivial manner about if the worst came, where would we both want to be? That was a conversation that we had to continue because we were thrust into a world of end-of-life and palliative care. Seth wanted to die at home, and that's what we planned to do. He was in hospital for a little while after diagnosis. He was back home for 12 days, and then because of the disease, he was thrust back into the hospital to manage some of the symptoms. And despite our best efforts and conversations, no one listened, no one responded, and Seth died in the acute hospital. So 51% of all UK deaths are in hospitals and hospices. Death and dying and bereavement are everyday occurrences. It doesn't happen to us all every day, luckily, but they are everyday occurrences. It's important that hospitals and hospices provide good quality, compassionate care. They respond to what people want, and they work with that. And understanding the patient and carer's perspective is crucial to improving care, because we only have one chance to get it right. If you go for a podiatry appointment and it isn't great, and you feed back through the friends and family test, the next podiatry appointment that you go to, there's a chance for it to be right. But with death and dying, there isn't. And I can vouch for the experience that lives on in the memory of the bereaved. So working with the People in Partnership group and with professionals at Hospice UK, we wanted to take a specialised approach to improve the experience of friends and family whose loved one is dying in a hospital or hospice. So we looked at the 15 steps challenge that you've probably come across from the patient's perspective. We looked at promoting the healing environment's evidence and experience from the King's Fund. And we deliberately took a method that focused on looking at all the senses, all the kinesthetics. What does it feel like? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? And looking at the feelings of people who experience end-of-life care along with professionals. And the approach was co-designed with the People in Partnership group at Hospice UK. So the approach to Fresh Eyes was to look at a hospital or a hospice from the point of view of the carers, the families supporting patients who are dying. It was a team of people with lived experience of end-of-life care. It was also a team of professionals from Hospice UK. And we thought about the practicalities, how we were going to feedback and how we were going to report that. So when we arrived at the hospital, there were two kind of aspects of the work. One was to look at some areas unaccompanied. So if you were arriving at the hospital as the family or carer of someone who was dying, whether you came in the car or you came in ambulance, what did that look like? How did you navigate your way around when you were in that distressed state? Could you find patient advice and liaison? What was the reception like? Was it clear where to go? Where was the coffee shop? Where was the cafe? We found lots of examples of kind of vending machines that were there 24/7, but actually the drinks vending machine would have credit card payment and the food vending machine would have cash only. And given that you might have got there in a rush, you might get there and you might have a credit card or you might have cash, but actually you might get a drink but nothing to eat or vice versa. So looking at that from the perspective of people who need support, the shops, the restaurant and the chapel. Often the chapels are very Christian focused, despite the fact we've got diversity, despite the fact there might be chaplains that represent other faiths, but visibly they're very Christian. And then we walked together with staff from the hospital through the emergency department, places like the clinical decisions unit, medical assessment unit, clinical assessment unit, the mortuary, and also the bereavement suite. I'm going to hand over to Anita now, who's going to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Lesley. Thank you. And I'd just also like to acknowledge my colleagues Claire Henry and Marie Cooper, who were very much part of this project, and also to say that it was a partnership project with NHS Improvement supporting this approach and supporting for some of the funding. And it was very much about working in partnership, and Lesley very kindly said, as we were talking about our artefacts earlier on, that I'm an artefact, because I did my nurse training 42 years ago. But I feel as passionate today as I did when I was kind of 18 going into my nurse training, that the only way to improve experience is to work in partnership. And so I'm hugely privileged to be here with Lesley and Roberta and to have worked with them on this project. But you want to know about the impact, and I think, you can read this, but I think, the impact of this and the benefits. We undertook an evaluation. We conducted work across 23 acute trusts across England, and also 8 hospices as part of the kind of overall project. And I would say the first 8 acute trusts, which were part of the initial testing, we were very much doing our PDSA, and we were learning together. And then coming towards the evaluation, where we'd been able to kind of refine some of the approach and the ways that we were working together and improve our feedback, approaches and reporting. And so the evaluation feedback was, we felt was very important, but that it was very clear that actually the impact was very much about having the involvement of and expertise of people working in partnership with in lived experience of what it's like to be in a hospital or hospice, caring for a loved one who is coming towards the end of their life, and also, what that experience continues to be after somebody has died. And so this was really, really key to this, and the impact of this having the impact. I think also, actually the team being there and working objectively, and as Lesley says, there was a lot of development around actually the senses and being very purposeful and intentionally non-judgmental about what we were seeing, because the purpose of this was around improvement and absolutely about supporting people with taking forward improvement through using the professionalised approach. I think also the importance of the participation of having people with lived experience, but also professionals and members of the hospital trust or the teams working alongside, so that there were no surprises in any of what we were doing either. This is all very much a team approach. Careful preparation beforehand, so we were doing work beforehand in terms of what teams might expect, what the trust or the hospice would expect from our visit, and also again those practicalities of us having our name badges, having our sort of permissions to be there, to talk about the fact that we would take some photographs, obviously, ensuring that they were taken without reference to any patients, etc. So that confidentiality, but that actually photographs are a very good way of sharing what does something good look like, what does something look like that could be improved. So that was also very much part of the preparation. Having a timely report and having verbal feedback on the day. I haven't got my glasses on. But okay, so a lot of this is kind of photographic evidence really of improvement, and you can see this to this, and it was just, again, a lot of it it can go unnoticed, and then there's a quote here of actually the walkthrough giving opportunities for people to talk about things that actually they may not have had the chance to have those conversations about, but that actually relatively sort of small changes could make a huge difference to the comfort and well-being of relatives. And you'd be surprised at some of the rooms that we had witness to, but also after the visit, how really things could be changed and made so much better. It wasn't about creating a bigger space, but it was about creating a more welcoming environment for somebody that was in distress. But also very much highlighting good practice. And again at Hospice UK, we are very much want to share good practice, and actually there were so many things that we saw that we were able to share with other colleagues and things that people could take on board. And it was true, regardless of anybody's CQC inspection rating, that improvements could be made, and that was, and I think that quote there as well, that it was also noticing and giving people feedback, positive feedback about where things were going well. So again, you can see quite a range of different photographs here of really peaceful, supportive facilities, and really important to kind of highlight that and share that and give that feedback in terms of providing comfort and well-being to families, carers and friends who are visiting the hospital. Again, some really good examples of some fantastic information, literature, appropriate information available. The ones in the middle were interesting because we found those all in a chapel in one of the settings. But actually, the one there at the bottom was about going into hospital, and we thought, well, it was a fantastic leaflet, but maybe it wasn't quite in the right place. It was good having it there, but actually you might not get to the chapel to find out about going into hospital. So they're small things, but actually, it was just about trying to highlight things that could make a difference. And some really nice ways that people were welcoming into the areas. Bereavement suites, and again, visiting facilities, and some really lovely examples of paying attention. Particularly returning property to friends, family and relatives. 1 minute. But you'd be amazed at some of the things that we've seen, and returning somebody's property in a plastic bag is really, that memory will stay with people. Just wanted to raise this quote at the end here, particularly as the palliative care nurse was talking about concealment arrangements and transporting people who've died through the hospital. And this was just a quote here about actually that's the most precious cargo around the hospital, and so actually with dignity and respect, how central that is. Areas for improvements, and I need to really speed up, but I think, again, unloved corners we decided to call these, but we saw many unloved corners, and actually with a little bit of care they could just be quickly made different. Long corridors, really uninviting, that's where families might walk through to visit a loved one in the mortuary. Some themes, and again, haven't got time to go through all of these, I know they're in the case study, but chapels being expected to meet the needs of all and not meeting the needs of anyone. We saw that time and time again. we saw fantastic examples, and we saw examples where people just, you know, it wasn't right for anybody kind of thing, and it could have been made better. And I think, you know, our unsung areas in hospital trusts are mortuaries, and actually we met amazing people doing amazing things. But you'd be surprised as well how many staff don't know where the bereavement visiting facilities are, where the mortuaries are in hospitals, and what it is that people do when they walk down those corridors. So it was about helping people to see things differently. It was about alleviating people's distress and disorientation for those people who may also potentially be bereaved. Thinking about quiet spaces, the physical environment, and the practical things that we can do to support people. And I'm going to just move on and hand over to Rebecca.
It was actually my quote about the special cargo, and it's only when you've been through this situation that you can really appreciate what this means. This was one of the most important pieces of work I've been privileged to work on over many years. My daughter died in A&E on a busy Friday evening in full view of everybody, which was not good. And so I know how important it is that when you actually walk down to the mortuary, you think you've given over the care of your loved one. They may be dead to you, but it's a different issue to me. They're still precious and they still count, and I care about their needs. And so I felt she was almost wrenched from me in A&E after I had cared for her for a long time. So I wanted you to care for her in a really loving and kind way. And when I've walked down corridors and I've seen some sterling work go on, don't get me wrong, but we need to emphasise some of the things that didn't go very well. I walked down a corridor where the weeds were growing on the inside of the windows, where bird droppings were outside the door, where I had to cross the mat to go into the mortuary, and I was horrified. I walked down another corridor where I saw pictures, all a very long corridor, they always seem to be long. Everything's exaggerated in your mind at that time, you're like in a bubble, and so everything seems much worse than it normally is. And so to walk down a corridor and see picture after picture after picture of disused operating theatres with rusty tables and syringes and bags hanging up, that was mind-blowing for me. I thought, where are your thoughts for me in this? You know, and this is what I found on this walkthrough. Some of these issues were dealt with on the very day that we told them about them. They were very gracious. They live busy lives, they bypass things. But one thing I think was most important to me is, and you might think about this in your job, how can you take me to a mortuary and make me feel safe and tell me what it's like if you've never visited yourself? And we found that so many staff had never visited the mortuary, and I found that too mind-blowing, because I want you to take me down there and I want to be able to ask you questions. What am I going to see? Am I going to feel safe? Am I going to see her immediately? And if you can't tell me these things, you know, that's going to upset me on the way down. So again, I have to say thank you to all the staff that we worked with on these projects. They were very caring, and they took the issues on board and dealt with them immediately, and it was a real privilege for me to be part of that.